Shalom and welcome to NeshamaCast, exploring Jewish spiritual care today, brought to you by Neshama, Association of Jewish Chaplains. I'm your host, Rabbi Ed Bernstein. NeshamaCast is off for the summer, gearing up for an engaging Season 3, starting in August 2025. But in the meantime, we're pleased to bring you this special bonus episode featuring NAJC's Vice President, Rabbi Rebecca Kamil. Rabbi Kamil serves as chaplain for the CLL Society in the Minneapolis area. The CLL Society supports and advocates for cancer patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia and small lymphocytic lymphoma. Rabbi Kamil recently appeared on CareCast, the podcast of the CLL Society. Rabbi Kamil has rabbinic ordination from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, and is a board-certified chaplain through NAJC. NeshamaCast is grateful to the CLL Society and CareCast for allowing us to share this interview on the NeshamaCast feed.
Did you know CLL Society now has an emotional and spiritual advocate program? We are proud to be working with a board-certified chaplain with 10 years of healthcare-specific experience in a variety of settings. Like all healthcare chaplains, she provides emotional and spiritual support to individuals and families of all faiths, including those with no faith backgrounds. Examples of support you may receive from this program include one-on-one individual support, bereavement and grief support, resources around spirituality and faith in a time of illness, and care partner support. This program is designed as a free service to those in the CLL community in whatever way they need. It is meant to serve as a supplemental support system to the existing CLL Society support groups, peer support program, and other programs, and limitations do apply. To learn more, please visit cllsociety.org.
Hello, and welcome to CareCast, the CLL Society podcast. I'm your host, Doreen Zetterlund. In this season of CareCast, we will have new hosts for each episode, giving our listeners the opportunity to get to know a variety of people from within the CLL Society community. I am a CLL SLL patient, patient advocate, and member of the CLL Society Patient Advisory Board. Today, I will be speaking with Rebecca Kamil from the Emotional and Spiritual Advocate Program at CLL Society. Rabbi Rebecca Kamil is a board-certified chaplain with 10 years of healthcare experience in a variety of settings, including hospice, hospitals, and long-term care. Like all healthcare chaplains, she provides emotional and spiritual support to individuals and families of all faiths and those with no faith background. As CLL Society's emotional and spiritual advocate, Rebecca can offer the following support and more depending on your needs: one-on-one individual support, bereavement and grief support, resources around spirituality and faith in the time of illness, and care partner support. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, it's great to talk to you today. Before we get into how your work brought you into the world of CLL, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to your career and life path of service?
Sure. So I am a rabbi. I was ordained from Hebrew Union College in 2016, which is the Reform denomination rabbinical school. And as part of my training, I was required to do 2 student congregations. So one year I flew out to New Iberia, Louisiana, and another year I drove to Muncie, Indiana, and would lead services on Friday nights and Saturday mornings and do Sunday school and all kinds of other things. And I realized quickly through my time in those congregations that while I loved the people and being able to lead the worship and do all of the other pieces of the job, that my absolute favorite part was being able to sit down one-on-one with a congregant or visit someone in the hospital or a nursing home and be able to connect on a personal level in a way that I don't get to do when I'm standing in front of a crowd leading a service. And so that really led me to pursue chaplaincy. And I started doing some training while I was in school. And then when I left school and was ordained, I continued my training as a chaplain. And I really haven't looked back. I love chaplaincy. And as you mentioned in my bio, I've worked in a lot of different settings: hospitals, hospice, long term care. And I love being able to meet people where they are, help them in moments of crisis or pain, provide hope and support as they navigate different challenges. Um, and I am just so grateful to be able to do this work, and especially to do it with the CLL Society.
Well, following up on that, when and how did your professional work intersect with CLL and the CLL Society?
Yeah. So I live in Minneapolis, and my dad has CLL. And I saw him go through the process of getting diagnosed and then needing to go through treatment. He would go to Mayo Clinic for treatment. Uh, I saw the toll that it took on him, especially during COVID and the pandemic, and how he was so immunocompromised and needing to be extra careful. I saw how he celebrated when he was told that he's in remission. And all of that really led me to be inspired by this idea of supporting people with chronic illness, and specifically with CLL. I think CLL and watching my dad go through this process really opened my eyes to the idea that it's a really unique disease. You are told you are diagnosed with cancer, but there's nothing you can do about it yet. You have to just watch and wait, right? Or a lot of people call it watch and worry. And that's a very scary place to be. And so I think it presents some unique challenges and some opportunities for us to connect spiritually and emotionally. And I really was drawn to the organization and all of the work that they do, all the support that's already provided, and how much they value being able to connect with people both in a group, in a support group setting, but then also one-on-one through the peer support and the Ask an Expert. And so this felt like a really natural addition to the organization. And having watched my dad navigate CLL and seeing how this disease impacted him and my family, I really felt passionate about becoming a part of this organization in particular.
Well, we're so grateful to have you. It's a wonderful program to offer that kind of support because this is an unusual type of cancer. I know when I was first diagnosed, we're told in general when you have cancer, catch it early and get it out of you, get it treated and get it out of you. So when someone tells you that you have to now watch and wait, wait for what? It's very disconcerting, and I think that watch and wait period is unusual in terms of cancer, and so we do have that special need in CLL, SLL patients. Watch and wait is very challenging, and so that helps to have support during that phase of treatment. And also in terms of making treatment choices, we do have the advice and counsel of our specialists, but there is a lot of indecision. Which way should I go? There are treatments that you take for the rest of your life. There are treatments that are short termed and have a finite treatment period. And there's a lot of pressure in trying to make the right choice. And it helps to have somebody that's knowledgeable about it to bounce those ideas off of and get support in the process of making those decisions. Is there any advice that you found to be more helpful specifically for CLL and SLL patients in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'll just add too that I don't just support people in the sort of watch and wait active observation period, right? I think there are so many different elements to this disease. So whether you're in treatment or you're in the watch and wait period or you're in remission or you're not really sure where you are, I am able to support you. And I think one of the pieces that I found that is particularly unique to this disease is how do I tell people that I have this illness? What do I say? How do I talk about it? And how do I explain to people how this is affecting my life? Because I think one of the things that I hear a lot is, well, you don't look sick, right? And so you can't have cancer. You don't look sick. And it's again, it's sort of this image of what a typical cancer looks like and how CLL really doesn't fit that mold. And so that's actually one of the things that I talk with people about a lot is how do we talk about this disease? How do we explain to people what's happening in our bodies? And how do we explain to people what we need and advocate for ourselves, especially in this post-pandemic era, right, where people really are a lot less careful and a lot less worried about the spread of COVID and other diseases now than they were. We have to still be careful, right? CLL patients still have to be aware and constantly monitoring their environment. And how do we figure out how to make decisions about where we go and who we interact with and how we continue to maintain a vibrant life that is full of connection and other people while still being careful. And so I think one of the things that I often talk to people about is when we're talking to people and explaining what we have and how this is affecting our life, we also need to think about what we need and what we want from others and how can we articulate that in a way that helps people understand. And how can we also be true to ourselves, right? And make sure that we're really, advocating for what's going to make us feel comfortable or what's going to make us feel safe. And so that's something that I often explore with people as they navigate this disease.
The pandemic was hard for everybody, but I know personally I felt that my special needs as a CLL patient, so much was happening so fast and so many people were ill. I didn't know that if I tried to raise the flag and say, hey, I have a special problem with this in my immune system, that it was going to be paid attention to because so much was happening so fast. So I really felt responsible for myself to just stay sequestered and not take the risk because I didn't feel like I would get the special attention that someone with a compromised immune system might need when so much was happening for so many.
And I think that often leads then to another thing that I talk to people a lot about, which is isolation and loneliness, right? The sense that we can't go out to the big event, or we can't go eat in a restaurant, or we can't go to the sporting event or the concert, right? Because we're immunocompromised and we need to be careful. I can't go to the family wedding or the other social occasion because there will be a lot of people there in an indoor space and I am afraid of getting sick, right? And I need to be careful. And that can then lead to us isolating, right? And being alone. And what does that do to us emotionally and spiritually? And how do we figure out ways of connecting in a way that makes us feel safe, but also allows us to live our lives, right? And not feel as though our lives are so diminished and really not what we want.
Yeah, for sure. When you were speaking before about the how we look well as CLLers, SLLers, we look well, and you tell people that you have cancer if you make the choice to share your diagnosis, and people expect it to be like other cancers, where for a year and a half or 2 years you have to be careful, and they come forward with meal trains and people bringing you meals, and they expect it to be over, and then you go back to your regular life. But that's not the way it is for people with CLL. There is no end, it's over, it's behind me. I don't ever have to think about it again. And so trying to help people understand that so that the support continues is challenging. And I would imagine that people do reach out to someone like you for that kind of support and guidance during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is something that I do talk with people about all the time.
Now we'll take a moment to hear a message from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Lilly is dedicated to delivering life-changing medicines for people living with cancer. Our scientists are urgently advancing new discoveries to transform some of the most difficult to treat cancers into manageable diseases. We believe that patients deserve treatments that help address unmet needs, including those affected by blood cancer. We are committed to answering critical questions facing the field to advance the treatment landscape for patients living with blood cancers who have limited options, including those with chronic lymphocytic leukemia or small lymphocytic lymphoma. We are doing this through our clinical trials, leveraging real-world evidence, and collaborating with academic institutions, clinicians, and our industry peers. In parallel, we're working with advocacy organizations and directly with the blood cancer community to raise awareness of unmet needs through funding research, education, and support services to address challenges patients and caregivers face and improve overall well-being. To learn more, visit lilly.com. From your work with CLL patients, have you found a common thread affecting most CLL patients' relationships, either positive or negative?
Yeah, I would say that there is a real desire for people to share their experiences with illness with someone with CLL. And oftentimes, a lot of times, that isn't uh, really applicable, right? We talk about how CLL is not a typical cancer. And so if you say, well, I have CLL, they'll say, oh, well, my cousin's wife, sister's brother's nephew had leukemia, and let me tell you about that, right? And that really isn't relevant. And so I think that is a common thread that I hear from a lot of people, is that people in my life want to be helpful. They want to offer me advice. They want to offer me solutions. They want to connect me with their friends oncologist that was so amazing. But it really isn't relevant because this is a very different kind of disease. And so some of what I do with people is, again, kind of helping them explain and articulate what it is that they need from people. Because you're right, this is very different. And it's not a finite period of time where you're going to be on treatment and then you're going to have surgery and then you're going to be done, right? This is an ongoing chronic illness. And so how do we figure out how to articulate that we're going to need ongoing support and what that support looks like? The other thing that I think I hear a lot is, again, that theme of isolation and loneliness and feeling like there aren't people that they feel connected to or people that they can talk to. And the support groups are incredible. And I think that is something I hear all the time, that people really, really appreciate the support that the CLL Society offers and those support groups. And I think that there are people that really wish that they could meet in person with someone who, quote unquote, gets it, right? Who can understand where they're coming from. And especially because of being immunocompromised, right? There's a sense of anxiety or fear about going out into the larger world and experiencing life perhaps the way they did before they were diagnosed. And so navigating that and trying to figure out, like I said before, how they can continue to live full, meaningful lives while also balancing that things have changed, right? And how do they hold both realities, that they want to continue to connect with people and that they have to be careful. And so I think both of those are really common themes that I hear a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know whether COVID helped the cause or not, but I know, oh, well, COVID's not good in any respect. But bringing awareness of people wearing masks and people taking precautions. I mean, people, if they see you wearing a mask in public now, they're like, oh, COVID's over. It's just like a cold now. But I think what people don't realize is that even before COVID, uh, we had to be careful. I mean, it's a bad cold that can turn into pneumonia. It's, RSV, it's bronchitis, it's any of those things. We are more susceptible to and more susceptible to poorer outcomes. And so we need to be careful of all of those things. And as the list grows of things that are looming out in the world, um, that just adds to our concerns about exposure. Maybe it's RSV. Maybe you go to a graduation party and it's little kids with bad colds, or the flu that's going around. You go to an adult party and it's the flu that's going around. And so we just have to make those decisions for ourselves. And I think it helps to have support from somebody like you who has experience in trying to socialize with your dad and, if a relative has a cold or something and you're planning a family gathering, then for that person to say up front, I'm not feeling very well, I probably shouldn't come, or let's reschedule this. And I feel like sometimes as a patient, when I reach out and I tell someone, I can meet you for dinner, but I'm going to need to wear my mask while we're indoors socializing. And then when it's time to eat, I'm going to take my plate out on the porch and eat and then come back. And they forget. And then I feel pressured. They set the table and my place is there at the table. And it's like, do I remind them that I have to go outside or that the socializing will stop while I separate myself from the party? So it's very, you feel like you say up front what your needs are, and then sometimes they're disregarded in the hubbub of the person who's coming to town and wanted to have this get together or whatever. It's forgotten, and it's like I can't afford to forget. This is my health, and this person isn't going to be there to get my prescriptions or help me if I get sick because they don't even live here. So,
Yeah.
just having to reiterate it. And I don't know that I've actually got eye rolls yet from people, but it's like, are you still dealing with that? Are we still talking about that? I mean, they don't consider it to be an issue anymore. So this is something for us that will be all of our lives. It was before COVID, and we still had concerns before COVID, and now COVID just adds to the things that we have to be cautious about. And I know I'm looking at a class reunion coming up, people that I haven't seen in decades. And I'm thinking, do I go out of state flying to this reunion where I'm going to have to wear a mask and there's going to be music in the background and a lot of people chattering? And are people even going to be able to hear me through my mask? And do I have to explain to all these people why I'm wearing one? And it's like those kind of things just they make the decision for you. Am I even going to go? Where, if I didn't have this disease, I would take the risk because you just get over a cold if you get it traveling. So those are like big decisions to make. And it's not something that I would have missed in another time in my life. But now I have to consider that. And there's some grief involved in that.
Yes, and I think that word grief, right, is so important to kind of hone in on for a second, because I think that is a huge piece of what I do, is help people identify the loss that they're feeling or the grief that they're experiencing, because oftentimes we don't think of it that way, right? We don't think of it as grieving or a loss because no one died, and that's how we sort of assume this word is used. But in reality, we can grieve that we are living our lives differently than we want to. We can grieve the loss of relationships or the ability to go out and do things that we previously used to do, right? Or even some people talk about their physical stamina being different, right? Somebody who was an avid bike rider for decades, right? And no longer can manage to ride as long as they used to. Or somebody who used to be a really passionate painter and really doesn't feel like they have the energy to paint anymore. I think acknowledging that grief and that loss is really important. And it's not about letting it overcome you, right? Or consume you. It's really just about giving space for it and acknowledging that this is real and this happens. And how can we help people give themselves permission to feel that way? And then kind of come up with strategies to cope and manage it. But I think first we have to just let ourselves have those feelings. And a lot of times I work with people on giving space for that.
Sure. I mean, all of us live with a certain amount of pressure and stress and different things that we have to accommodate in our own personal lives. That's just life for everybody. But then for folks with CLL, SLL, there's another layer of that uh, stress and grieving that we have to accommodate. And then I will share that I did spend some time talking to Rebecca when I lost a dear college friend. I stood up in her wedding, and also my nephew who passed at a very young age. And on top of the stresses that everybody endures, on top of dealing with CLL and treatments and the restrictions of my life during COVID, I then had these additional grief episodes of grief that we all endure. But someone with CLL, SLL, that's on top of a burden of grief and loss that we are already experiencing. So reaching out and having someone to talk with, like Rebecca, is really helpful at times like that. It's just when the grief meter, goes into the red, and it's like I just need a little bit more support. I know a lot of people deal with grief. A lot of people are having things happen during times of COVID and other losses that are just part of the cycle of life. But it's just the volume sometimes gets to a point where you say, I could just use a little extra support.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm here for. I think I often describe myself as a specialist, right? As somebody who can really help you navigate the spiritual, emotional aspects of this disease. And you have doctors, you have friends and family, right? You have the other programs that the CLL Society offers. And so I am sort of a supplement to that and can provide additional support in a very specific capacity, right? In a way that maybe isn't being addressed in other settings or isn't being addressed that way. And so I really am open and here to support people wherever they are, right? If they're dealing with a new diagnosis, if they're dealing with having had this disease for 20 years, if they're dealing with having to make decisions about treatment, if they're dealing with other things on top of their CLL, right? Like additional losses or relationship dynamics or other challenges in your life that really feel overwhelming because you already have something going on, right? You already have CLL. And then on top of that, you have this other challenge. And it can feel like your capacity has been reached, right? Your limit has been reached and you don't have any more reserves left. And so how can we talk through what it looks like to give yourself space to connect with yourself spiritually, emotionally, and really process some of that?
Yeah, it is quite a load to carry, and to have someone that you can speak with. Sometimes that load gets too heavy to carry, and we do have support groups, which I've found incredibly helpful. But the support groups have a number of people in them, so you're not always in a situation to share and get support from the group on all of these individual things that are happening. So to have a resource that is more specific uh, to you one on one, where you can share those individual things. Like, it's not that I wouldn't share those things in my support group. It's just that we have a lot to share. People are starting treatment and there's a lot of things to share. So getting to that one on one, this happened to me, and I could use some support, is really most helpful in a one-on-one situation with someone such as yourself. So I just to say that you're very much appreciated, Rebecca.
Well, thank you.
Now we'll take a moment to hear a message from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
What could help you live well with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, also known as CLL? The first step to moving forward with confidence is to learn all you can about CLL. LivingWithCLL.com is an informational website designed to help you learn more about CLL, understand different treatment options, gather tips on living with CLL, and learn more about financial considerations. You can also sign up to receive notifications for the latest CLL information and resources posted to livingwithcll.com. If you or a family member are managing life with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, visit livingwithcll.com for resources and more information.
I wanted to also bring in what we talked about in what the program offers through the CLL Society, is also caregiver support. What can you say a little bit? Can you say a little bit about helping caregivers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do offer support to caregivers, to family members of people affected by CLL. I think uh, when someone is diagnosed with CLL, it of course affects the individual, but it also affects their family, right? It affects their loved ones. And it can be difficult sometimes to figure out how best to support someone with this type of disease. And I saw my own family navigate that with my dad. I navigated it with my dad, right? How do I best support him, both as his daughter and as somebody who does this for a living? And I think that I struggled with it. And so being able to offer support to people who are in the circle of someone with CLL, I think is really important. I am open and available to that, and I am happy to meet with family members as well and talk about how it's affecting them, as well as the ways that they can be supportive to their loved one. I think sometimes in healthcare, we spend a lot of time focused on the patient, right, or the person affected by the disease, and not as much time on supporting their family members. And that is something that I feel really passionate about. It is absolutely imperative that we provide support to the person affected by the disease. Absolutely. And we also have to acknowledge that there are ripple effects, right? That the people that love them are also affected. And so how can we support them as they navigate this? And giving people space to talk about how this is affecting them can be really helpful, because there isn't often an opportunity to do that in other settings, right? It feels uncomfortable to talk to your loved one who was just diagnosed about how it affects you. And so being able to give space and time for that, I think, has been really powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it's doesn't impact you alone. There is that ripple effect, and it's wonderful that we have this opportunity for caregivers to reach out and get some support too. Um, and would they do that separately with you, Rebecca, or would the patient also be in that session, or is it up to the individual?
It's really up to the individual. Typically, I suggest that we do it separately, only because, again, I think giving space for that person to talk about their own feelings, right, without the other person in the room, can sometimes be really helpful. But if it feels more comfortable, or it's something that they really want, then I'm happy to do a joint meeting. It's really up to them.
Yeah, I would concur, just to say that that the caregiver would be free to express everything without, concern for hurting the feelings of the patient, or for the patient to feel, any kind of burden. So yeah, I'm glad that it can be, whatever they're most comfortable with, and uh, that's a great way to go about that. Um, Harkening back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, there there's also certain CLLers, SLLers that are doing cancer solo. We're alone. We don't have a care partner, and there are, additional stresses with that in just navigating the the physical logistical aspects of getting to appointments and parking and making sure you have, your notes or your paperwork or your test results that you want to discuss and questions you want to discuss. And when you're dealing with fatigue and maybe brain fog and just stress in general, it's really helpful to have someone with you at an appointment so they can pick up things maybe you missed. um, but there are, I believe, that extra support needed for people who are managing this disease on their own. We did sort of touch on that. Is there anything else you'd like to add about that?
Yeah, I think that I do have a number of people that have reached out who are navigating this alone. And I think that there is definitely a sense of anxiety or stress that is caused by that, right? Because you don't have someone who you can call to take you to an appointment, or who can be there with you as you process news or hear something from the doctor, right? And so I think um, that is a common concern and a common theme that I hear from people. And I am here to listen. I'm here to offer support. And while I wish that I could be there with everyone in the room as they go to their doctor's appointments, I don't have that many frequent flyer miles, so I can't fly around the country. But
Yeah.
I am here to process how that affects somebody emotionally and spiritually, and kind of work through some of those feelings.
Well, that's great, Rebecca. I know, as I mentioned, that you were very supportive of me during that time. I am someone who is doing CLL, SLL without a caregiver, so that does add extra stresses. We have different markers in our disease that put us at either low, intermediate, or high risk, and the specifics of that, a lot of times, more ancillary friends or relatives that aren't in the same state, they don't always understand those distinctions. And so the fact that you have knowledge of CLL and you would understand if someone had extra stresses because they were in intermediate or high risk group, or had markers that indicated that maybe their time to treat is shorter, or that their remissions might be shorter. I mean, a lot of this is still in flux because the treatments for CLL have advanced so much in the last 10 years that we don't have long-term data on all of these things. So there's sort of that unknown and that uncertainty. But dealing with CLL and SLL when you don't have someone to bounce those ideas off of, that doesn't have skin in the game with you to know those specifics, that creates really an extra challenge. So it's wonderful to have your support and to have access to a program like this through the CLL Society. Um, in general, are there any words of encouragement that you would offer to CLL patients or their caregivers?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say, and I say this a lot, is you're not alone. You have a community of people that are dealing with this disease as well. And the CLL Society is such an incredible resource with that, right? There are so many programs, there are so many opportunities for people to get information, to talk to other people, to create a community essentially of support. And so I think that is something that I often try to emphasize. And the other thing that I often tell people is what you're feeling is very normal. And I always say, I'm not just saying that, right, to make you feel better. I really mean it. And most of the time, what people are feeling is what other people have been experiencing or feeling too. It's a disease that, as I mentioned before, has some unique challenges, right? And so it is something that can be very individualized to each person, but there's also a lot of common themes and a lot of commonalities among people with CLL and SLL. And so what people feel, what people experience is very normal and is something that, as I mentioned before, is more often than not experienced by lots of other people too.
Great, thank you for that. We appreciate your insight so much. The final question here is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you'd known at the beginning of your journey with CLL patients and their caregivers? Is there anything new that you've learned as your work with CLL patients and their caregivers has evolved, and even including, your dad, experiences with your dad?
Yeah, I think when I first started working with the CLL Society, I had a pretty good understanding of the disease and some of the treatment options, but I think I've learned so much more about all of the different ways that people can engage in treatment and what treatment looks like and how that process gets started. And so I really feel like I have been able to learn so much from the people that I talk to in terms of that specific piece. But I think in addition to that, I feel like I've also been able to get a better sense of how this particular disease is unique from other cancers, and in terms of how we talk about it in our society, and in terms of how we frame it with our family and friends, and some of the unique challenges that brings. And I think especially in this post-pandemic era, right, when CLL patients in particular have to be so much more careful still, right? Um, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of stress around that. And I saw my dad in particular during the COVID pandemic, right, really anxious and trying to figure out the best ways to stay safe. And I think now seeing him even post pandemic, right, still kind of wrestling with some of those things, maybe not to the same intensity, but still wrestling with those things, I think is a pretty powerful thing. And it's something that I definitely grasp better now, I think, having done this work for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's very insightful, Rebecca. I don't wish CLL, SLL on anyone, but I do think that people who have a personal relationship with someone with CLL or SLL do have a better understanding, and it makes you even better at the job that you're doing for us, the support that you're giving to us, that you have that personal experience, that you see it firsthand, and that your own heart is tugged at the moments that your dad has to struggle or make decisions, and that makes you an even better advocate for us, and even we appreciate your support so much because you do have that personal insight. So I want to thank you, Rebecca Kamil, for speaking with us today about your work as an emotional and spiritual advocate to the CLL SLL community and through the CLL Society. And you can connect with Rebecca at cllsociety.org under the tab for the Emotional and Spiritual Advocate Program. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us, Rebecca, and the fact that you're here working with us. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Welcome. Thank you.
We appreciate the listeners for tuning in. CLL Society has support groups you can join and many other patient resources. We hope you enjoyed today's CareCast. If so, please like and subscribe and feel free to leave a review. We have more great guests lined up to talk to you about CLL issues and the things that matter to us. So we hope to have you back here again with us next time.
As you immerse yourself in this CLL Society podcast, you're not just tuning in, you're connecting with the community that's changing lives. Have you benefited from emotional and mental health support through CLL Society articles, support groups, or other programs? If so, please help us continue our work. Your donations help to sustain critical programs dedicated to nurturing the health and emotional well-being of all CLL patients and care partners. Our podcast is more than just sound waves. It is one more way that CLL Society is innovating to meet the needs of everyone living with CLL and SLL. With your contribution, you are helping us foster a culture of compassion and support. You're paving the way for individuals to find solace in shared experiences and breaking the silence surrounding emotional health in the CLL community. Every dollar you contribute makes a difference. Join us in our mission to support, empower, and educate. And remember, we are all in this together. Go to cllsociety.org to donate today.
NeshamaCast is a production of Neshama, Association of Jewish Chaplains. Thank you to Doreen Zetterlund and her team at CLL Society's CareCast for sharing with NeshamaCast this interview with our own Rabbi Rebecca Kamil. Additional thanks for logistical support to Allison Atterbury, NAJC Executive Director, and the NAJC Social Media Committee. Please consider making a contribution to NAJC to support NeshamaCast and all of the vital work that NAJC does to promote Jewish spiritual care. Here at NeshamaCast, we're seeking to upgrade our production process and welcome generous gifts for this purpose. We also welcome sponsorship from institutions where NAJC chaplains work. Please write to me at neshamacast@gmail.com to discuss a gift or a sponsorship opportunity to cover an episode or even a whole season. Or click on the link in the show notes to donate. A transcript for this episode is available automatically in the Apple Podcasts app. Our theme music is a Niggun for Amecha, written and performed by Reb-Cantor Lisa Levine. Please help others find the show by rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts. We welcome comments and suggestions for future programming at neshamacast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow NAJC on Facebook to learn more about Jewish spiritual care happening in our communities. May we all work together to heal our world.